Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Now let's go to the rolling Flint Hills, home of the Cats and Dogs studio. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Zach and Gills and the Dogs. We've already had one restart due to technical difficulties. I hope this does not reoccur. What never gives you difficulties is going to the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. They're our sponsor, have been for many years. Make sure you go check out the Fridge whenever you're in town. I know some of you are going to come to town because it's summer, and summer means fewer students in Aggieville. It certainly changes the demographic, and we happen to have a expert in Aggieville business flows with us today, Ryan Gilbert. Gills, would you say Aggieville, like for the dinner and all that, is more consistently busy in the summer than the fall or spring?
I mean, it slows down maybe a tad bit, but a lot of the locals like you sort of come out, and then the tips are better from the older people. And I know I'm calling you old, but and necessarily the money's pretty much the same for someone like me, right? So we don't mind. I love summer. I think the vibes here are just awesome in the summertime.
Yeah, I agree.
Get those students out of here.
Yeah,
it's good to have a little break from them. Okay, we'll put it that way.
Yes. But it does open up traffic road construction season.
Yeah. I haven't seen anything new yet. Is there?
Have you driven by Ahern Fieldhouse as of late? The gymnasium and auditorium are gone.
They're gone. Yes, I did see that.
I didn't even know when they did that. They're gone.
I was driving with my brother over the weekend. He's like, "What happened?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, they've been tearing that down for a while." I know they were kind of dismantling it, but it was finally actually gone. So
it's wild to see that east side of Ahern that was kind of covered up by the gym.
Looks fresh.
Cool. It looks cool. But yeah, I got stuck behind a guy trying to back a semi. They're loading up the debris.
Oh yeah.
And it took him like 6 minutes to get into the gate right. And I'm like, I'm late for an appointment. But that's just Manhattan. No matter which route you pick, you'll be under construction. But all roads lead to the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Technically, they could, actually. Let's get going with your questions from Wabash Station. Zach Carlson, take it away.
You didn't want to name the streets either.
No, I'm not going there.
Not going to try today.
No.
Yeah. From Itane BB, Matt Wells being on the K-State sideline just excites me, and I don't know why. Please tell me what to expect from him. Will he have a short stay here, or will he get K-State's offensive production back to the days of the Snyder and Bishop era?
Well, let's keep this in mind. Connor Riley's actually the offense coordinator. It'll be Connor Riley calling the plays. But Matt Wells is bringing in his ideas. And, of course, as is on the defense side of the ball, this is a very cooperative staff. Everything's built as a team. So Matt Wells is putting some things into the offense, different quarterback option run schemes, or, selection plays, like the read option or something like that. He's also put in some pass patterns to help isolate players in one-on-one situations, which I think becomes significant if you're Dylan Edwards, because that could play right into him. I think Matt Wells is an outstanding coach. I also think it's really good that he's going to provide a different perspective to Avery, maybe a little more veteran, seen a little more things. Let's be honest here. Other than a brief stint at Northern Iowa, Colin Klein has been at Kansas State. And that's pretty much two offenses he's functioned under, if you want to eliminate Ron Prince, because he technically was recruited by Ron Prince, which is weird to think about. But I think Matt Wells will really help Avery Johnson. I mean, I think he'll be a great benefit.
Yeah, I think having a former head coach on your sideline is a tremendous benefit for any college football program. Connor Riley's going to run the offense, but Matt Wells is certainly going to have a lot of input. I don't know how long he stays here. He might find a head coaching job somewhere. I mean, who knows? Connor Riley might find a head coaching job somewhere, and Matt Wells becomes the full offensive coordinator. Who knows? The length of time there. But I foresee Matt Wells staying at least a couple of years because the allure of Avery Johnson is just really strong. That he's going to be, a Heisman contender potentially for the next couple of years if he plays what we expect him to do, I guess. So, I don't think he really got a fair shake at Texas Tech. you know, and I don't know if Texas Tech really improved that much beyond, you know,
I mean, he had to deal with the pandemic
yeah.
and never got any kind of traction.
I mean, it wasn't, I don't think it was fair for how short of time they gave Matt Wells at Texas Tech. And I think that, you know, he has a lot of upside from you know, being a potential head coach somewhere else, but that benefits K-State for the time being.
Agreed.
None of us really know what's going on in his mind, what his future plans are. But one thing to keep in mind is that not every coach is best suited to be a head coach, right? Being in more of a secondary role as a coordinator where there's not as much pressure or weight on your shoulders. Maybe that's something that is Matt Wells is just going to love, right? And he was obviously not as important at Oklahoma, right? He's more in a prominent role now at Kansas State, but he's still, you know, if K-State loses the game, I don't think many people are going to be necessarily blaming Matt Wells. And so, let alone that, but just focusing on your craft, one specific area of the game, the offense, right? Rather than having to call these plays and manage an entire roster, maybe he's just meant to be an assistant. That's not a knock on him. There's many coaches out there that are like that. And so, again, maybe he's here for a year and bounces. Maybe he's a coordinator for the rest of Chris Kleiman's tenure. Who knows? It could be anywhere in between that. But keep in mind that not every coach has to be a head coach. Not every coach that is an assistant has those goals of just being a head coach.
I agree. Keep in mind he was successful at Utah State. I think if he departs, it might be, thank you, Alexa, might be to another smaller program to become head coach again and kind of start over. Hope, but who knows? Maybe with his kids the age they are, maybe he's ready to park for a while and work for a friend. And I think you're right. I think Connor Riley, he's going to be a head coach somewhere, and maybe Connor does go to a smaller school to become a head coach and work his way up. It'll be intriguing to see how this plays out, but adding a veteran coach who also is a active recruiter. Matt Wells has already proven that he likes to get out on the road and talk to players and talk to families. And so I think this is a great benefit to Chris Kleiman. And again, just having that other veteran voice in the room could bring some new and exciting things.
Next question is from Kat in Colo. I listened to a football analyst predict that college football will end up with 3 tiers: a pay-for-play division, and he lists Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, etc., a traditional scholarship compensation division, and he lists, you know, what we had a few years ago, and then a no scholarship division, such as the Ivy League or NAIA. Where would you like to see K-State in such a system?
Well, I don't agree with that last. I think it's going to be 3 subdivisions of Division I. I don't agree that there'll just be the middle. I see what he's saying, but NAIA has scholarships. I mean,
yeah,
they're basically loans, but you know they call them scholarships. Here's a scholarship. Oh, you got to repay it. But I do think Division I will add that 3rd upper tier. And the question K-Staters need to ask is, do you want to be part of that? I know you want to compete at the highest levels, but is that really in the best interest of the university and the football program? I don't know. Without knowing the financials of what the upper division will be and the availability of any kind of quality media deal for the middle division are unknowns. I mean, if no one's going to bid on the media for the middle division, the college football as we know it, then that's a huge financial struggle. And I think K-State would have to put their money into going to the upper division. But I think some colleges, universities are going to have some really hard decisions to make. Do you want to be part of semi-pro football? I think fans will watch for a while, but as it becomes clear that, because coming with that will be, the investors coming in to buy programs, basically. I don't really want to be a part of that. I don't want that kind of money coming in and just really turning into a professional team using a college name. Is that really what you want? I think people will grow to regret that. It won't have the same. I mean, it'll still say Alabama or Georgia, but if you're Missouri or Purdue, I know Missouri's pretty good right now. That's not really fair, but and you start getting your butt whipped on the regular, playing semi-pro football, are you really going to feel as compelled to show up for games? Because it's not really your college team. It's a team borrowing your college name. It's going to be a mess, man. But I do think that third division will come into Division I.
If we basically have a franchise system of, the top tier making their own league and everybody has some sort of revenue share, is it that much of a stretch of the imagination for the NFL to get involved and say,
No.
we want to have a couple of farm teams, so to speak, not necessarily the minor leagues where you can call guys up and send them down, but, kind of like a soccer developmental club, like a youth club, basically. And, is it of a benefit for K-State or KU or Mizzou to be close enough to the Chiefs where you might financially benefit? I'm just talking out of my butt right now, but,
everyone is on this
yeah, it's just there's so much unknown of, what pay for play is going to be. I mean, I think that if you're K-State or, a school the size of K-State, you have decent football success, decent athletic department success with basketball, women's basketball, baseball this season. K-State's in a healthy spot at the moment, but where do you want to be in 10 years? Do you still want to be competing as you are? Because I think competing as you are right now, I think that means you're going to need to be in the upper division.
Right.
If you want the fan interest and the donor money, donors have spent a lot of money on this university and on athletics, and K-State athletics, Gene Taylor, whoever else comes after him, they need to be good stewards of that donor money and what those donations helped build and become.
Agreed.
And I don't know if playing in a lower division than anything other than being top of the top is, going to appease those donors that have spent the money in the past and recruit new donors coming forward.
Agree.
So it's a balancing act, and you have to. There's never been a more critical time in college sports to get something right than right now.
Agreed.
And we still don't know what the future is going to be, but if the SEC and the Big Ten came together and said, we're going to make a new 48-team league across the country, if you're K-State, you got to try your hardest to get into it, I think.
I'll say this. If the Big Ten and SEC try to form a division in which everybody can't join, you can't make the decision at the university level that you want to be there. Let's take Troy. I always use Troy because they're in the South. They've had success. If Troy donors decide, we want to play at that level, but they're denied entry. If Kansas State is denied entry, I think if you're not inclusive with this league, a lot of viewers will tune out. They'll just stop watching. And it is a real threat to college athletics.
But also, if the Big Ten and the SEC come together, I am certain that they would be wanting to kick schools out. There are schools in those conferences that are not better than an Oklahoma State or a K-State or an Iowa State
Exactly right.
or a TCU or a Utah or an Arizona. There are schools in the Big 12 that are absolutely on merit above schools in the Big Ten and the SEC from a fan standpoint, from a viewership standpoint, from an entertainment standpoint, quality on the field standpoint. There is so much quality, even in the ACC and, the former Pac-12. You can find a nationwide conference of 48 teams where not all of your SEC or Big Ten teams are going to make it in, nor do they deserve, at least on merit, to be in. But if you're K-State, you got to figure out a way to kind of be proactive probably right now and own that narrative.
I did like the proposal of it was 8 different,
like the 10 league or the
it was
10 team leagues or 12 team leagues.
There was one
rotating league at the end.
Yeah, there was a relegation league group So I did kind of like that. I agree with Chip Kelly that football is going to have to break off from conferences and just be its own thing. And that will then redefine conferences, because why you don't need to be nationwide. It's not going to affect your contract. So I don't know. Gills, your thoughts?
Man, I don't know if I have much to add,
Yeah,
especially with you and Big B. I feel like this is something you guys talk about all the time on the Big 12 Insiders to an extent. So, no, man, I agree. But people aren't going to tune in. I know, Fitz, you've talked about like the bowl games, right? Like you can watch, I don't know, Georgia play South Carolina or something, because maybe there's a chance that K-State plays them in a bowl game or, you know, something down the line. If it's a separate league or separate division, what have you, why would I want to tune into some random teams that have no impact on K-State?
Great.
Yeah, it probably ends the bowl structure as we know it.
Oh, yeah, which I'm fine with.
But to your point of splitting off football, boy, does it make Brett Yormark look really smart trying to get a separate basketball deal right now.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I think that if football truly splits off, and if Brett Yormark is the first to get a massive separate basketball deal with ESPN, maybe Turner, that sets the Big 12, at least the rest of the, you know, if you're an athletic department in the Big 12, it sets up the rest of your department if football is separate and you have a big basketball separate, you know, Olympics, you know, Olympic sports separate, whatever deal that matches or at least comes close to what football was previously as far as a split of revenue. So
I will be fascinated to see how much impact making the playoffs on a consistent basis for schools such as Kansas State, if that, you know, guarantees them in that evolution of college sports that they'd be included. There's just a lot of things here, folks. Just everything about college athletics is starting to change from right now. Hey, resetting my computer kind of helped the camera. Now it's glitching. Never mind. Boy. Okay, on.
Next question's from Itane Bibi. After Dublin, where do you want to see the Wildcats playing and why? And the same question for men's basketball.
Well, I'm all in on Brett Yormark's Mexico play, but I think K-State football would be down that list. I've said it before. I think embracing Spanish language is important for the university, not just sports, because of the changing demographic of Western Kansas. There's, you know, you almost have to be bilingual now to teach out there. And I think the more Kansas State can embrace Spanish speaking market, I should say, I think it's better for the university and also sports. Those young people out West that are now in America probably have changed their thoughts on education and what can come of you if you do go to school. And I think we're going to see a serious influx of, you know, Spanish first speakers. I think that could be really good for Kansas State. Really good. Could solve a lot of enrollment problems. So I hope K-State keeps reaching into, you know, doing the Spanish language games, broadcast for football and hopefully even basketball eventually. Football's the driver here. But I would like to see the Big 12 play a game or two in Mexico pending safety issues. Yeah, I would love that. I would. But also I'd like to see K-State play some games in Hawaii.
Well, they need to build a stadium.
That's an
first.
important part. They kind of let their stadium fall apart. It's, you know, it's like the University of Kansas, but in a tropical environment.
I will say London. That's where I would want.
Yeah.
I think the Big 12 should start. They should copycat the NFL and do a London game or two every year. Find a decent soccer stadium in London, whether it's, you know, Arsenal Stadium or Chelsea Stadium. Find somewhere that's willing to, you know, have football, you know, American football for a couple weeks. Maybe find a way to lay turf down over the grass since they don't want their pitches being messed up. But or play it at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But they're already taking 2 weekends off to have NFL, and maybe you just somehow, you know, play on Saturday for, you know, the same weekend of an NFL game and figure out a way to make it work with the NFL. So I think that London being the largest city in Europe, I think if the universities, want to create some sort of education exchange, you send somebody, a couple hundred students a year where they go to your school, you send students over to London. I think that'd be really beneficial from a university marketing standpoint. If you can say, hey, every year, every 4 years, we're going to go play a game in London, and guess what? Part of that is 200 of you get to go for a year and study in London, while 200 people from London come and study, at K-State or wherever else in the Big 12. So I think that London is probably the biggest market, especially, if you look at what the NFL has done, that's been their biggest market for growing the game internationally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, outside of Mexico, like I think you've made great points there, but outside of that, if you want to go to Europe, I think that London is definitely the move.
And why not Canada?
Yeah.
I'm not Canadian. I know that surprises some of you because the way I like snow, I don't even know. I think the Canadian market is another one that could open up for college football. I'm not sure how engaged they are, but they certainly enjoy football. They have their own Canadian football leagues. The rules are a little bit different, but I'm sure they watch the NFL too. So I wouldn't mind some.
Do you know what a rouge is?
It's what I wear to make my cheeks pop out. No,
I couldn't explain what a rouge is either, but it's a Canadian Football League term. That's the only term I know. I think it's like 1 point or 2 points. I don't know, something.
Good for them.
I don't know. It's weird.
I'll butt in with basketball for just a moment to get off of this rouge topic.
Yes.
K-State's the hoop staff. They've got a lot of ties, obviously, to the Caribbean and that area, and so, from my understanding, I think that's where they want to play year in and year out. And it's great when you have last season where you play in the Bahamas and you've got Miami and Providence, marquee games that can help your resume, win or lose. You go out and schedule those games, right? But you go back to the first year, I think it was Nevada and Rhode Island and LSU, which isn't terrible in retrospect. But when you look at this year, Paradise Jam had it pulled up, but there's 2 teams that haven't been announced yet. I don't know who those are going to be, but it's an awful field. If you don't win all 3 games, it's embarrassing. But the point is, it's not a strong field. And so how much is that really going to help your resume and all that stuff? It's great to win, but maybe I'd like to see this team go to Maui or go to one of those marquee events. And I get they want to stay where their ties are in that area. I blast in the Bahamas. It was so much fun. Shout out to Kelly in Vegas. It was a lot of fun. But at the same time, you want to go out and you want to challenge yourself with some good, strong opponents. And there's so many of those that are here in the States. So it's kind of a, which one do you want to sacrifice? A good, fun experience and be close to, family and stuff like that for this staff? Or do you want to go out and get those tougher opponents scheduled? I know it was rather underwhelming for, Bruce Weber's teams to be going to, Kansas City or somewhere like that. That's not necessarily as attractive to go travel and have a fun trip. But at the same time, I don't know where if there's anything international or anything like that. I'm just kind of going off on a tangent now, but you got to schedule those stronger opponents. And I get it. They want to stay in that area, but you've got to schedule some stronger opponents. And now that becomes doubly as important with your non-conference schedule in general. Well, you've got to make up for not playing stronger opponents in those MTEs. You've got to make up for it with some other games in there. And so I don't know if there's any real tournaments like that are in Europe or Mexico or anything like that. I don't think there are, but there might be in the future. Why not say, you know what, let's take a break from this, trip to Puerto Rico for a year and let's go to Europe and play, get that brand for K-State basketball expanded even more.
Yeah. If you go elsewhere, I think you need to make it a tournament. And the tournaments in the Bahamas or whatever, those are ESPN productions that are made for TV. It doesn't matter exactly where those games are played. That's more of a team experience, I guess. But at least for football, a lot of those are fan experiences for, going over to Dublin or going to London, wherever, So I think that if you're going to do it for basketball, you need to make sure that there's somewhat of a fan experience. I think it's a little tougher get basketball fans to go overseas. I think
I would agree.
Especially because it's usually right around Thanksgiving. It's just never works out for people.
I think that's why the Caribbean or, Maui, if you're invited to that, if Maui ever recovers enough to have it, I think those things will attract viewers, attendees, but for the most part.
Last question of the first half from O2 Cat. Is there any way that the number 11 ever becomes unofficially retired?
I'm a fan of that, of unretiring that number. But there's a limitation to rosters right now. I mean, it gets to be a challenge to keep numbers from duplicating on the field, particularly with special teams. You can divide numbers up. There's an offensive and defensive guy wearing this number, but once in a while, as we saw at Missouri, I mean, even if K-State had been able to return that field goal, it was going to be a 5-yard penalty for illegal participation because they had two guys wearing the same number out there. So I'm a fan of unretiring 11, honoring Steve Grogan and Lynn Dickey because of the 11, but they need the number. And I just think retiring jersey numbers is not a good idea in college sports. Yeah. Just not.
I think the way you honor it is you need to make it like Michigan's number 1 or, other programs that treat a certain jersey number with a lot of respect and history. Maybe you assign 11 to your starting quarterback at the start of the year. Maybe you do something like that, or your best wide receiver, or, whatever, the number may be or position may be. But I think you definitely treat it with an honor. Like 11 needs to be an earned jersey number. I think that's the way you at least honor the reason it was retired. I guess you need to give it to someone that's going to make an impact on the team.
Let's be really blunt here. Both of those quarterbacks, Lynn Dickey was very good in college and led the program under Vince Gibson to, some notable highs, including, big wins over Nebraska, Oklahoma. Steve Grogan was a better quarterback in the NFL than college. He was pretty good in college, but both of those dudes played a long time in the NFL. But I would think as a pairing, comparing college players, Michael Bishop and Colin Klein wearing number 7 would be more worthy of having that number retired.
I agree.
Once other numbers exceed the level that caused the retirement of another jersey, then why? You can't retire 2 numbers. You're just compounding your problem. I would be all in favor of unretiring and just honoring it. And I think you're right. Have it be a leadership.
Give it to the captain on the defense, captain on the offense. You're the 11.
Teams.
Yeah, or that.
Yeah.
Whatever. You're the 11.
That's good. Gills would never be 11.
Nope.
Yep.
That's all I have to say.
Nope. That's it for the first half of the Powercat podcast. Luckily, the cameras didn't freeze up on us.
Knock on wood.
How's that dog cam working out for everyone? Currently, one dog's on the couch. Dude, my God, that's pathetic. Look at you, man. Don't you have any self-respect? He looks like he's passed out drunk. And Daphne's behind me down over here, so you can't even see her. So the dog cam's pretty much the bald cam right now because you can see my head. We'll be right back with more of the Powercat podcast. We're sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. They're swell.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Fitz and Zach and Gills and the dogs hiding from the camera. Should I even keep the camera up in this current state? I don't know, but we're going to
move around.
They do.
Yeah. I'll be back in frame here soon.
Yeah, Zach just checked out, dude.
He's not getting up anytime soon.
And your shoulders block him perfectly, so people can't see where he's at. And now the mic's in the way. He's just dead. He's out. He's out cold. He's like Gills on a Saturday night. Here we go. Your questions from
Tuesday night.
Oh, yeah, that's true too. Your questions from Wabash Station. part 2.
From Dinland 0809, are there any shutdown defenders on the current roster at guard or forward, assuming Aker plays primarily at the 5? Achor.
Yes.
I haven't heard it said out loud. I don't think
Achor. It's been a point of issue for me how to pronounce it, but it is Achor.
Okay,
Achor.
I didn't look it up.
I finally listened to some announcers, and I'm assuming they had it right.
Okay.
Ron Gilbert told me how to say it. I just don't trust him. It's too early to know. Gills, it just is. Someone always steps up and says, I want to do that. It's going to help me get on the court. And, maybe it's someone with length like a CJ Jones or, I don't know. But that will emerge. Nobody is bragging about their defensive prowess and getting high praise for transfer portal stuff. It's all about offensive numbers, but defense is such a point of emphasis for this coaching staff that I think someone will step up and say, yeah, I want to be the guy that takes on the best guy, because that's going to help me. If I can keep up my offensive production, it's going to help me get to the next level.
Yeah, I'm not really sure who the answer to this question is right now. Like you said, Fitz, somebody will emerge. I've got no doubt in my mind that somebody's going to step up and be that dude. I'm sure all these guys, their mentality is they probably want to lock down that number one player on the opposing team, but only one guy can obviously do that. So I don't know who it's going to be, but guys, K-State's roster is so athletic and they can move and all this versatility. They're not going to have any issue, I don't believe, guarding some of those types of players just because of how, some of those stuff, getting the ball through the net, turning the ball over on offense, like maybe some of those things could be a challenge for this team. I don't know. But when you're so athletic, this team has so much athleticism on it. Defending, as long as you're bought in, defending might come easier than some other things for this team coming up. And so I don't know who that guy may be. One of the Joneses, Max Jones or CJ Jones. Michaela Bridge is a freak athlete, and we love to watch his highlights, his dunks, but a freak athlete can also be a freak defender as well. So I don't know who it's going to be. I really don't, but there's plenty of candidates, right? Remember last year, right. Jerome Tang talked about the applications for leaders were still being accepted, right? Maybe the applications for that number one defender are being taken right now.
I agree.
Next question is from TDE67. With the withdrawal date for the NBA draft quickly approaching, it's today, right?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
It's today as we're recording.
Yes,
okay.
Today is when we are recording. Would you anticipate that the remaining basketball spots are filled by the end of the first week in June? And from the real ZCat Mandu, whatever it is, will Jerome Tang fill all 13 scholarships?
I believe so. They might hold one and then not ever find anything they want, but they've popped up on a junior college player who I think is the backup filler. We didn't find what we wanted. Let's give it to this kid and see if he can come in and do some stuff for us, which they've done in the past. Their first team had, I can't think of his name, Anthony Thomas. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yep. That came.
The first offseason, they took a flyer on him late. Yeah.
And didn't work out and left. I don't even know what happened to him. But yeah, I think that they'll attempt if two got good players such as Arthur Kaluma end up wanting to come to K-State after deciding to pull out of the draft. Yeah, they're going to offer him. They'll bring him in, but they probably still even with getting Kaluma back, that doesn't alleviate their need for another big guy. I think this roster desperately needs one more big guy particularly that can bang a little bit and defend and, really physical guys like Hunter Dickinson. So.
I don't know what's going to happen with Kaluma. Obviously, by the time you're watching this, Fitz, you're going to post this up at midnight tonight.
Yep.
So we don't know. You'll know watching if Kaluma's bound to the NBA or not. But from our understanding, I think it's probably more likely that he returns to college. Now, obviously, him entering the transfer portal fits, I guess, what we probably understand is that was more of a safety net if there were no more spots available in Manhattan. Now, we could be wrong on that, but I would say if he doesn't go to the NBA, like that spot, Jerome Tang's still going to welcome him back. But at the same time, he wasn't promising him a spot, right? If two 5-star transfer prospects popped up and they said they want to come to K-State, Jerome Tang was going to take him. That didn't happen. From now until midnight tonight, I think there's going to be 2 open spots left for Arthur Kaluma. At least 1 open spot left for Arthur Kaluma. And so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, by the time you're watching this, you'll know what Kaluma is going to do. But yeah, they're going to go out and maybe, you don't want to bank on Keontae Johnson popping up in August. You don't want to bank on that. But if this staff doesn't view anybody out there right now, like if you were just going to settle on a flyer, a project like Anthony Thomas, if that is what they would maybe have to settle on, they might just wait and be patient. If they have to have 12 guys through July, August, and even into September, then maybe you can take a flyer then. But at the same time, Will McNair and Quez Glover popped up very late last offseason. And so to have an open scholarship spot was awesome. It was a blessing in disguise while fans were panicking that they didn't have, dudes on the roster. It ended up working out. Will McNair was a fine piece. Things didn't work out with Quez Glover, but if he would have been healthy, he would have flirted with the starting 5 spot. And so you don't want to force things. You don't want to just try to get your roster as full as quickly as you can. At the same time, though, you don't want to be too patient. I think K-State found a very good balance of that this offseason. Right now, we're at the end of May, and they've got 2 spots left. Could they have gotten a few guys that they missed out on? Absolutely. The roster could look better, and I'm sure the staff would agree with that. They missed out on Battle, Cliff, to Bama. They missed out on a few guys that they thought they were in some pretty decent positions in, but at the end of the day, 2 open spots at the end of May is probably right where you want to be. If you've got more than that, then you've got some problems. You've missed out or you're too patient. Or if you only have 1 or 0 open spots, then you have no wiggle room if somebody pops up that you really think you want to go out and grab. And then you might have to force somebody out of your program, and you don't want to have to do that to anybody. And so I think K-State's in a good spot right now. And obviously by the time you're watching this, we'll maybe know a little bit more about Arthur Kaluma's status as well.
Yes.
I agree.
That's how you do it, Gills. Yes.
Next question's from I Like Pickles Cat. What changed that ended the walking boot era?
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Is it really over?
Yeah. Maybe it just, went away. It was a drought. And now
it's law of averages.
Yes. I'm not sure. I'm not. And has it really? We saw some boot last year. Who had it? I can't remember.
I know Gasson this was probably his first year. Gasson had some foot issues, right?
Yeah. Seems like someone was Quez Glover at one point.
Yeah, his was more of a knee issue.
Yeah, but I think someone was in a boot. Aoka Lee was in a boot.
Yeah.
Same facility they're using with men and women.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a different approach in training.
You want to hear my theory?
Go for it.
I think that in the Bruce Weber era, they practiced a lot more at Bramlage Coliseum than they did in the facility than what Jerome Tang is doing. Because when we go back to thinking about, when we'd go to media availabilities during the basketball season, a lot of the time they'd be in Bramlage and we'd go over and do it in Bramlage. I don't think we've done a single media availability after or before a practice inside Bramlage Coliseum. We have always done them after or before practice in the ice basketball training facility. So I think there's that, but also I think that the fact they changed the court this year helps too, because I think that the issue all along was playing on that old court in Bramlage Coliseum. And I think Bruce Weber practiced way too much on that old floor in Bramlage Coliseum. And I don't know what Jeff Mitty does for women's basketball. I don't know what that whole thing is, but I think they practice quite a bit inside the ice.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I don't know when injuries happen or where they occur, but if I had to make my guess, most injuries were probably happening from or being caused by that old floor in Bramlage.
I think that's a good theory, actually. I will co-sign on that theory. I think
Jerome Tang is accepting that the basketball training facility is exactly what he needs for his basketball program.
Yeah.
So
good. Are you a foot doctor?
Go ahead and go with Zach. I'll go with Zach. I'm gonna just say that
all 3 of us are gonna.
And maybe it's confirmation bias of the new court being very nice.
Yeah.
Because
The old
Man,
one was trash.
sitting on that, like I promised, sitting on that court for a decade, and then getting the new one this year, and going around the Big 12 conference and sitting on those courts, you could tell how bad K-State's floor was just walking on it, looking at
I
it.
just had a glimpse of your future, sitting on courts with Zach Carlson at your podcast.
That's my
to talk about how your bum feels.
dude. It hurts so bad.
Mhm.
Next question, last question of the podcast from Ohio Powercat.
I bet she lives in Ohio.
Maybe.
What about
Good.
Cat and Colo? Where do you think he lives?
And the city of Colo, Kansas.
What if Ohio Powercat was Bowling Green Powercat? Because then there's two different Bowling Greens. Be tricky. Just saying. With the 23-24 academic year coming to a close, do you agree that while overall K-State was successful, they failed to meet expectations in many sports? Will 24-25 be better, or are there too high of expectations?
Football, because of the way the last game, Iowa State, I think, fell short of what fans expected. Men's basketball, certainly. Women's basketball was ranked number 2 in the country at one point. So not even getting out of the first site location, which is Manhattan, is a failure. Baseball certainly has fallen short, although they start Friday in the tournament. We'll see how that goes. Volleyball started slowly and then surged. Yeah, I think it's been measured against expectations. It's been a bad year. Not horrible, but bad. So it does give you hope that it'll come back around in this upcoming season. I think football has all the opportunity in the world to win this conference and to maybe even go undefeated. And we'll see. I'm not expecting that, but they have that opportunity with this schedule. And men's basketball, I think, will be improved, but the conference gets even tougher with the addition of Arizona and going to 18 games. So, or 20 games. 20 games. But yeah, let's hope this upcoming season is better.
Yeah, I would say overall K-State, I wouldn't say K-State was successful, but they weren't a failure. They were pretty middle of the road as far as expectations, I think. But going back to that Iowa State game, if K-State wins that game, they're still in the Pop-Tarts Bowl though, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think? So, I mean, yeah, you would have wanted to win that game, but I definitely wouldn't hang my head over just a bizarre,
Was it bizarre, though, or was it the way that K-State lost that game and you saw guys not giving a crap?
I don't know. I think that Iowa State probably had better cleats.
I would agree with that.
Maybe that's true.
I think that from an equipment standpoint, I mean, you go to how many times or what? Iowa State did not run a single play from their red zone. Is that the stat? I think, and they scored 21 plus yard touchdowns each time. I mean, I think that's just proof that they were somehow better equipped to play in the snow than K-State was. I think that at the end of the day, that's what it was. Nothing you could do about it. I think that, the Pop-Tarts Bowl winning that, I think that met expectations. I wouldn't say it exceeded it, but when you go 8-4, they went 8-4, 9-4.
Should have been a 10-win season.
Should have probably been a 10-win season, yeah. But at the end of the day, you won your final bowl game. You would have played in that bowl game anyway. I don't think you can be too disappointed in the football season, but it could have been better. Basketball, obviously, you needed to make the NCAA tournament. Women's basketball, you needed to get out of Manhattan, make the Sweet 16. Baseball remains to be seen, but they kind of fell off at the end of the year. There was probably hopes of being a top 16 team going into the NCAA tournament preseason. There was a good shot of being a 1 seed and hosting a regional. So, they can still make it out of Fayetteville for sure, but it's going to be a tough challenge for them to do that this weekend. But I think 2024, 2025 will be a better season than this season because volleyball's on the up. Football is going to be competing for a Big 12 championship.
Yep. Basketball's going to be improved.
Basketball's going to be much better. So there's a lot of, I don't want to say the expectations are going to be too high, but I think there's a better chance of meeting those expectations next year than this last season.
I would agree. Ron Gilbert, thoughts?
The only thing I'll say is what are you? I mean, at the end of the season, you can look back at the overall record, the games that a team won and a team lost, right? Like that is what it is. And so I guess that is kind of the ultimate way to measure how a year went. But relative to expectations, right? Going into last basketball season, coming off of an Elite Eight, there were some very high expectations. But you lose Quez Glover and Naquan Tomlin before the season really starts. I think it's very fair to get some more reasonable expectations and set back those higher standards that you might have had, right? Same thing goes for women's hoops. You mentioned it, a top 5 team at one point in the country. Well, if you go based off of that, it was a massive failure, right? But if you go looking at it heading into last women's hoop season, if I were to tell you that they would have hosted an NCAA tournament game, I think we'd all be happy with that. So, what time of the year were you setting these expectations? You go back to football and that Iowa State game, right? Like, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that K-State won that Pop-Tarts Bowl, had Avery Johnson have the game that, I mean, he didn't have an amazing game, but he proved that he was kind of the future of K-State football, as if we didn't already know that. He went out and won the game leading his team. And so that Iowa State game, I mean, Matt Campbell left some of his guys in Ames, right? That I guess maybe didn't want to be there. And so I know we all
2 running backs. Yeah.
Yeah. Will Howard was pretty much had a foot out the door going into that game. And so if that was the way that K-State ended the regular season and then goes and loses a bowl game, I mean, we view that football season a lot differently than how we view it now. Like that Oklahoma State loss on the road, I think it's more viewed as the odd game out on the schedule, so to speak, and teams have that and all that. But if K-State loses its bowl game, then maybe we view that game in the Iowa State game, and those are kind of the way we view that last K-State season. And so it's a good thing K-State went off on a high note in football. Absolutely. I think basketball was a rather forgetful way to end the year, not only with K-State being in the NIT and losing its first game, but also the comments from Jerome Tang about believing that they're an NCAA tournament team and all this stuff. And he was, by all means, he was going out and stating his case for his team, the wins that they had in the Big 12 and all that stuff. He believed they were an NCAA tournament team, but I mean, they were not even included, I don't think, on does the NCAA do next 4 out? I forget what they all do, but K-State was not close to making the NCAA tournament. And so it just was kind of you almost wanted this team. I don't want to say they should have just ripped the Band-Aid off, but after the way it started with Naquan Tomlin, it seemed like that whole season was just something you'd like to maybe forget. And that's not a knock on anyone from that basketball program. It was just, man, you kind of just want to move on and forget about this season, because from the get-go, it was just kind of set up for failure. But in Jerome Tang's defense, right, what's the next best thing, right? He always says, what's next after a win or a loss, right? What's next? Well, you miss out on the NCAA tournament. What's next? As men, you've got to go out and do the next best thing. And that was, in their eyes, the NIT. And did everybody lock in and compete in that game? I think there were maybe a player or two that I think could have definitely been more mentally focused in that game. But at the end of the day, they went out and they competed and they did the next best thing. So I shouldn't be too critical of them doing that. But just the way that it ended overall with missing out on the tournament and Jerome Tang, I mean, social media wasn't kind to Jerome Tang, I guess is my point, when he went out on that spiel in Kansas City after that loss to Iowa State. So, I mean, obviously, I think it's probably good that K-State missed the NCAA tournament, because now next year you aren't being asked to go out and make the Elite Eight, because like last season, that was the expectation that Jerome Tang had set for his program. Now, same thing with football. I mean, you're not coming off of a Big 12 title. You're coming off of a Pop-Tarts Bowl win, which is great. But now you can raise that bar and go out and win a Big 12 in football, because it's right there for you, Fitz. You've mentioned it. The schedule is very favorable for this K-State football team. Basketball's reloading. And so, baseball's on the come up. You hope this isn't sort of the peak of the mountain, right? You hope that this is a stepping stone in the next season, regardless of what they may do here in the college baseball
World Series.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah,
that
event slipped my mind, but I've been rambling for too long. I will shut up now, guys. I'm sorry.
That's a good finish right there.
Thank you.
That's the podcast.
That's it. Gills, shut up. We got to end this podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good. This is the most boring dog cam we've ever had. I'm going to talk to the dogs. Okay.
They're pretty sleepy a lot of
Yeah,
time.
I know we all are. I'm dozing. It was probably Kels did that to me. But yeah, so that's it. Daphne. Oh, she's way over. She's like underneath the camera. Sneaky little.
She's gonna knock it over like Cole.
That was so funny. That's it. We'll talk to you next week.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.